Assalamu alaikum. Psychologist Saeed Sanamjid here, and today's lecture topic is research methods in psychology or psychological methods that are used in research. So, first method is observation. So, let's start. What is observation? Observation is one method for collecting research data. It involves watching a participant and recording relevant behavior for lateral analysis. For lateral analysis, for lateral use, Albert Bandura, a psychologist and learning theorist who first proposed social learning theory, can be credited for first having noted observational learning. It is a powerful tool for psychological inquiry. Albert Bandura was social learner and social theorist. According to him, most of the behavior that we learn is our from environment, and we learn behavior by observing other, by remodeling their behavior. Modeling means to apply or to implement the ways of other in person's own life. So this is what Albert Bandura called social learning theory. Types of observation. There are four types of observation: naturalistic observation, control environment, structure and unstructured environment, and participant and non-participant observation. So now see what is naturalistic observation. In naturalistic observation, people are observed in their normal environment, often used in the study of animals' behavior. And normal environment mean like on the spot what you are doing, what you are behaving, how is your action towards other. So this is what we call in natural setting, in natural environment, in natural criteria. Like you didn't have your personality changes by worrying or by having any fears that other is observing you. You are acting in your normal routinic day to day duties. Advantages and disadvantages of naturalistic observation. Advantage one is used to generate new ideas. Obviously, if a person sees you in your uh, original condition, in your realistic condition, so they can uh, to some extent they can um, predict your personality. They can predict your upcoming future success. Point number two, the entire situation can be studied. More insight is gained, more wisdom is gained. And disadvantage is not possible to observe all type of behaviors in natural settings, and many instances of behavior do not repeat themselves. Control observation carried out in laboratory. The observer decides where the observation takes place, at what time, and under what circumstances. The researcher can manipulate the settings. Researcher can manipulate the results. Researcher can manipulate the hypothesis. Standardized procedures are used. Specific techniques, specific theories, specific tools are implemented. Advantages of this. Advantage number one, can be easily replicated by other researchers by using the same observation schedule. Observer can have control over variables. There are two types of variables: dependent and independent variables, cause and effect variables. A less time consuming method comparing to naturalistic observation. In naturalistic observation, we are studying the overall environment, the ups and downs, the background, each and everything. But in laboratory setting, we are just studying, we are just observing only specific phenomena. Disadvantage: participants behave differently since they know that they are being observed. They become vigilant, they become more anxious that they are being studied. This is human phenomena. Once you notice that someone is being watching you, that you can perform or you can behave very carefully. So this is one of disadvantage. Structure observation, also called systematic observation, coding scheme is used by researcher. It is a data collection method in which the researchers gather data without direct involvement with the participant. For structure observation, we can say there's sort of a questionnaire. In a questionnaire, it is not necessary for the researcher to get involved in each and every situation. In questionnaire are distributed through different sources. So this is the collection of data without involvement of a participant. Now, without involvement, direct involvement of the participant means, or without involvement of the researcher means that researcher can provide or can send questionnaire through different medium like net, internet, email, uh, through their colleagues. And the direct involvement, without the direct involvement with the participants, means that they are not actually present in that situation. Advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons of this method is: advantage is greater control for sampling, cause they collect a huge variety of data. Measurement error, definitely when we apply techniques like SPSS or smart PLS, so there are chances of error. Permits stronger generalization and checks on reliability and validity, similar to survey, but questions are not asked. Disadvantage is language and culture barrier. uh, if researcher is not present on the spot, that there might be some difficulties for those who are taking part in the research, or those who are participating or completing this questionnaire. Cause of language, uh, culture barriers, it means that something that we can implement in a west are not possible that we implement in our society. So this is what we call culture barriers. People may behave unnaturally as they know that they are being observed. This is natural phenomena. Because of anxiousness, a person become more reluctant to behave in a natural way. Unstructured observation, it involves the researcher recording the behavior they can see. Advantage, provide rich qualitative data. Disadvantage, it can be difficult without the use of recording equipment. So for example, observing children playing with their new toys, field observation, or serving. On the spot, they are keeping records in a writing form. And these records are not properly recorded or filmed by any new or any innovative equipments. So there are huge chances of error. Participant observation involves active participation of the observer. Participant observation is of two types. Type number one is where the participants are aware that they are being observed, which is called overt participation. And the other where the participants are not aware they are being observed, which is called covert participation. Overt and covert, sorry, there are mentioned here and here. Overt, one is overt and other is covert. Overt is visible and covert is invisible. Overt and covert are visible and invisible participation. Like in English we use for visible, invisible, implicate or explicate. In psychology we use visible for visible and invisible, implicate, overt and covert. Clear? Non-participant observation involves observing participant without actively participating. Advantages: participant tends to act more realistically. Researcher has no influence over the situation. Researcher cannot manipulate the situation. Disadvantages are observer may not get a feel of what is happening, harder to find or back up a hypothesis without influencing the participation. So this was all about observation method. Now look for the summary of observation method. Um, if we say in summarized form, we can say that the one of the basic method of psychology is the observation method. Like early psychologists try to study and explain behavior, as we mentioned, Albert Bandura, the social theorist, social learning theorist, by just observing the behaviors and activity of organisms. On the basis of their observation, they try to find explanation. This type of observation is called natural observation or non-control observation. The terms mean that the observation were made in natural setting, as we discussed, and when the behavior occur on the basis of repeated observation, the psychologists attempt to formulate it general laws and principle. An outstanding example of law based on such natural observation is the law of association formulated by John Locke, a British philosopher. At a still deeper level, when we talked about philosophers tried to combine observation with logic and tried to develop psychological theories, natural observation was used for a long time. So they were compelled or they were bound to use natural observation in philosophy, in psychology. As far as advantages and disadvantages are concerned, so for oral observation method, advantages are it is easy to collect data and having without having any special arguments or gadgets are necessary. By observing behavior in natural situation, we are really observing behavior in life situation. For example, if the aim of psychology is to understand and predict behavior in real life situation, so then the natural things to do will be study behavior in real life situation, in day-to-day life situation. Whereas in the case of physics and chemistry, observation are made in laboratory using different chemicals, beaker, etc. In order to hold good, even outside the same cannot be said and done in psychology and cannot be used to predict behavior. While life situation, if you're talking about life situation, they are different from laboratory situation. So naturalistic observation would be more ideal and meaningful than laboratory setting. And some disadvantages that we talked about, naturalistic observation in a summarized form, it is difficult to convert data from natural observation into quantitative terms. And one other highlighted disadvantage is different observer observing the same behavior may conclude differently. Why this happens? Because of the individual perception, because of the individual differences. Everyone perform same situation differently. As I told you before, the things that are beneficial for you people not necessarily beneficial for me, and the things that are beneficial for me not necessarily that are beneficial for you people. So there are huge culture differences, so there are huge barriers, so there are huge individual differences. Like for example, how we can narrate example. Okay, if one finds a friend is not in a very communicative mood, one may conclude that he is angry, but another person meeting him may conclude that he is sad. Thus, the same behavior on a part of an individual may convey different meanings to different observer. Like you perceive that your friend is angry, other perceive that your friend is sad, having a gloomy mood. Same behavior was observed by two different people in a different way. And for many instances of behavior do not repeat themselves. An important requisition of scientific observation is repeatability. This is often impossible in natural observation. In scientific observation, you can repeat your experiments, but in natural observation, naturalistic environment, you cannot repeat your research or your finding or your observation. Thus, if the psychologist is interested in studying how people react when a close relative is involved in an accident, it is obvious, it is clear that he cannot either expect or even wishes for many such instances. This one may see that the method of natural observation imposes several limitations. It involves a lot of time and effort. Imagine a chemist who wants to study the effect of heat on some chemical and cannot wait for the solar heat to increase above 600 degree. So the best thing for him, he would do to take the chemical into a laboratory, heat it, and watch the changes. And in natural observation, he has limitation, and and psychology, like other sciences, has also turned to what called experimental observation or the experimental method. Clear? So this was all about observation method. Second one is experimental method, by using by conducting different experiments. In this method, independent variable, which is a stimulus, are manipulated by the experimenter to determine their effects on the dependent variable. What is measured? Dependent and independent variables are cause and effect. Clear? It is the observation under controlled condition. If you are if you are conducting any research in laboratory setting, in each and every laboratory setting, your observation are under control conditions. You can manage the light, you can manage the equipments, you can manage the chemicals, you can manage the setting of the entire research, sorry, for setting for the entire experiments. So this is what we call control condition. Merits and demerits, pros and cons of this method is more reliable. Merits are more reliable, definite, precise. It can be replicated and less biases. Like there are less chances of errors by repeating or by setting the experimental equipments, experimental setting, lab setting. Demerits: complexity on the behavior does not permit perfect control condition, and hence it is difficult. Inclusion of artificiality, behavior is natural. So if behavior is natural and you make a unrealistic setting, then a person become aware and he become conscious and act against his or her routinic or day-to-day life. In experimental method or research, we used to explore cause and effect relationship between two or more variables, and this type of research involves systematically manipulating an independent variable effect, independent variable, uh, and the measuring the effect that it has on dependent variable. Independent variable is cause and dependent variable is effect. One of the major advantage of this method is that it allow researchers to actually determine if changes in one variable actually cause changes in other variable. So look at the diagram or look at the image. One, there are two-person. One is labeled as independent variable and other is dependent variable. Independent variable is saying nothing you do affects me, I am independent. And dependent variable is saying something you do affect me. So independent and dependent variable are cause and effect. Independent is cause that affect dependent variable. Clear? Or in oral summarization, let's see the oral summarization of experimental method. Experimental method is just a procedure by which certain condition events which occurs in natural are artificially created and reproduced in the laboratory. The chemist who studies the effect on a heat of chemical in laboratory, as I mentioned this in observation method, he actually creating and reproducing a phenomena that he can be expected to occur in a natural condition under certain circumstances. One of the psychologists accepted the idea of experimentation. If one of the psychologists accepted the idea of experimentation, then it can become possible to create in the laboratory for different types of condition that can produce or stimulate any type of behavior that psychologists may desire to study. So in short, we can say that the experimental method involves the creation of certain stimulating condition or the presentation of certain stimuli that would evoke or produce a certain response. So the experimental psychologist therefore essentially produce certain stimuli and studies the reaction and responses. For example, if a psychologist want to study how people react if they hear a very loud noise, the experimental procedure is very simple. He or she invites some of the friends and other volunteers to his or her laboratory or room and arrange the procedures a very loud noise without the people being aware of it. Then he or she observe the behavior and finds the most of his or her friends jump from their chairs. A few of them actually fall down, but one or two are relatively undisturbed. And then again, the researcher tries to find out why one or two were undisturbed. He came to know that these two friends had served in the army and were used to loud noise explosions. He comes to know the two conclusions. First one, which is in general, people get disturbed when they hear a loud noise sound, suddenly. This was a general normal phenomena. And the second, what he concluded, when people are actually already aware about the certain situations, certain circumstances, so there are less chances that they become anxious, that they become worrying. Clear? In experimental method, uh, the basic thing is that we we make setting in a laboratory in a specific situation. Laboratory doesn't mean that you having any scientific specific equipments, beaker or voice recorder or EEG, ECG equipments. It means that you are manipulating or you are observing your variable, your dependent and independent variable in a very close setting, in a setting that you want, in a desired setting that you want to study your participant. Clear? Third one is survey method. Survey method is gathering data using interview questionnaire from a sample selected sample. like uh, you have a specific topic for your research, and according to this specific topic you arrange the questionnaire demographic sheet, and you gather data by using interviews, by using questionnaire, by using telephones, by using email, by using net. Clear? Merits and demerits of survey method: easy to administer, short time required, definitely. You take very less time in order to gain or in order to collect a large amount of a data. Demerits: validity of tools, sample selection criteria, cooperation from public. Cooperation from public means that this is mostly observed that when questionnaires are being handed over by researcher or by his or her colleague, mostly the people uh, did not want to go through it. They just simply tick or cross the options without reading them. So this public cooperation cause question on validity of tools and sample selection criteria. Two types of survey: cross-sectional survey and longitude survey. Now, cross-sectional surveys collects information from a sample that has been drawn from a predetermined population. The information is collected at just one point at a time. For example, 15 minus 24, 25 minus 34, 35 minus 4. Answer should be same. Answer should be equal. Like 4 plus 1, 1 plus 4, 4 plus 2, or 2 plus 4, 2 plus 2. Answer is 4. 2 plus 2. Answer is 4. So having a different phenomena, having a different theory, but coming to a same conclusion. This is what we call cross-sectional survey. Longitudinal survey: information is collected at different points in a time in order to study changes over time. This is lifelong researches. Three longitudinal designs are commonly employed in survey research: trend studies, coherent studies, and panel studies. Let's see the example of longitudinal survey. As I told you before that this is lifelong research from birth till end of life stage. Erik Erikson theory of development is one of the example of longitudinal research method. In Erik Erikson stages of development, he explained each and every stage of human being from birth till a death of a person, from birth till the end of a person's life. In summarized form, we can say the survey method is commonly used in social psychology, Erik Erikson, Albert Bandura, and other branches of psychology. Survey method is also used, and it is used when we are interested in knowing how a particular behavior is disturbed among a group of people. Let's suppose if we want to understand the study of habits of a college students, then a survey is undertaken. Similarly, if you want to understand the opinion of a workers on a certain legislation, then a survey is undertaken. Surveys can be general, relating to people at a large, or to a specific group like a students or a worker. So in survey, there are two types: longitudinal and short term. For example, we study all the people belonging to a particular community that we are interested. That thus, if we want to study the reading habits of a high school students in Peshawar city, we can visit all the schools and collect information from all the students. This type of survey is known as a population survey, in which we are aware. Clear? So, in short, survey is a shotgun approach to research. It depends upon self-reported data and so can be highly subjective because of the survey generally involves many subjects. It is a quantitative method using a random sampling of subjects, and it's probably the only method in psychological research where random sampling is used. It is not experimental method, but the samples are carefully selected. Clear? Other method is interview method. Very simple, very common. All of you are aware about interview. The word interview refers to one-on-one conversation with one person acting in a role of the interviewer and the other is in the role of interviewee. Interviewee is giving interview and interviewer is taking interview. What is an interview method? An interview method is a method of conversation with a specific purpose. Psychologists use interview method in order to gain information in an efficient and streamlined manner. Specific interview or specific for a specific purpose, like for job interview. In job interview, you are not allowed for a gupshup. They have organized form, they have structured form of questions that they asked from you in order to judge your personality, in order to gain information about your efficacy. Interview methods. Interview is oldest and most widely used method. The conducting way of interview depends on the objectives or goals in a questions. It means that what you actually want to find. Number three, investigate issue in an in-depth way. In in-depth way, the interviewer wants to know what's actually you are feeling, what actually your competencies. Clear? The fourth one is discover how individual thinks and feels about a topic and why they hold certain opinions. The interviewer wants a justification for your yes and for your no. You have to justify your yes and no by giving logical reasons, by giving authentic references. Advantages of interview: useful to obtain detailed information about a person's feelings, perception, and opinions. It is usually used to achieve a high response rate. Respondent use their own words for record. It is not influenced by others. It enables teachers to tackle everyday classroom problems, superior data collection, and it creates friendly atmosphere. Friendly atmosphere doesn't mean sort of a gupshup. It means that building a reputation with each other. Demerits of interview: this method is very time consuming for setting up, interviewing, transcribing, analysis, feedback, reporting. It can be very costly. For interview, you need to be in a proper situation, in a proper setting, in a proper environment, so it can be costly. Different interviewers may understand and transcribe interviews in different way cause of individual perception. As I narrate an example of a friend that is not a good mood, one perceive that he is angry and other perceive that he is sad. So on a basis of individual difference, like interviewer, different people comes to a different conclusion by observing same behavior. Pre-planning is important. You have to arrange specific questions and to know about how you are going to interview and when and where. This is a pre-planned program, not an all of a sudden, or it cannot be successful by conducting interview in a hesitation. So you have to pre-plan the interview. It is a subjective and artificial. Artificial means like subjective is one person to person, and artificial means that you have already prepared questions. You are just limited to ask the questions you have been prepared. And repetition is difficult cause of individual differences. Types of interview: structured interview, semi-structured interview, and unstructured interview. Structured interview is also called formal interview, specifically used for job purpose, for recruitment, etc. It is patterned interview. Definitely, you have already prepared questions. Planned interview, you have planned for what you want to ask, in which setting, in which circumstances. Standardized interview, cause you are, if you are employing someone or recruiting someone for your organization, for your company, so you have to be vigilant about your questions, about your settings, about your personality. So this is what we called a standard interview. Structured interview questions: close-ended question and open-ended question. In close-ended questions, ask respondent for a specific piece of information and often requires the respondent to choose from a list of given alternatives. For example, are you currently taking any drugs? Here the respondent can either answer by saying yes or no. If he said yes or if he said no, so there is nothing left to probe it further. Open end questions: Questions are then that can be answered in many ways and allow the respondent to give elaborate, thoughtful answers. For example, tell me about yourself. So, tell me about yourself, in which the respondent answered thoughtfully. What is his name, his or her name, from where he belongs or he or she belongs, what he is doing currently, why he came there, what is his like or dislike, non in sense of eating, like and dislike in sense of his competencies, his routine life. Clear? Advantages advantages of this method is interview method is in this method we can reach a large sample and questions are fully understood. The pre-developed system or guide to check the result, because you have planned everything before conducting the interview. So the results or the advantages are as according to your planning. It is easy to test the reliability. Obviously, the questions you have already planned, the question you have already generated, you give them uh, percentage, or you give them points according to your setup. So reliability is easy to gain. You can take place within a short amount of time, and it's allow generalization of result. So these are the advantages of structure interview. Disadvantages of structure interview: the answer from structure interviews lack detail, because the participant, the respondent, is limited to give specific answer in a specific time. Restrictive questioning leads to restrictive answer. Structure interview are harder and more complicated to develop. Before giving questions, we have to write them, test them, and then make sure that the interviewers stick to them in order to get a reliable results. Interview questions may be leaking out. The method seems a bit cold and impersonalized. There is no sympathy and empathy concept in interview. It is harder to provide an excellent candidate experiences. So this is what we call interview method. Or interview is like obtaining obtaining information and making decision, making judgment on a basis of these obtained information. For structure interview summarized form, we can say that in this type of interview, the interviewer asks as a participant about predetermined questions. The questions are already planned and created in advance, which means that all the candidates are asked the same questions in the same order. So it is used a highly systematic techniques for recording, and it also use a quantitative research method for the purpose of a survey. So this was all about structured interview. Semi-structured interview, this is also known as moderately structured interview, hybrid interview, and combined interview. In short form, semi-structured interview is the most important one. Like we write down the important questions that we want to ask from the candidate, and we develop few conversation starters to explore specific interest points from our candidate resume, and depending on candidate answer, we follow we used a follow-up questions to gain more in-depth understanding for their qualification and motivation. And also interviewer follow the natural flow of conversation and feel free to explore. They can in semi-structured interview, a little bit chit chat is a part of a semi-structured interview. Advantages are it is more informative. It's needed data is collected in this, and biases are less in this. More flexible interview provide more detailed information, provide relaxed atmosphere without having anxiety and depression of a interviewee. So this is this is more reliable as compared to structured interview. Disadvantages outcome mostly depends on the interviewer responses. It is highly time consuming, very expensive, unreliable. Cease to be unreliable means that for chit chat, if you are doing a little bit chit chat, so there are chances of your distraction. Difficult to difficult for analyzation. Information may not be revealed if you are asking someone and you are using your chit chat method and you are doing a gupshup with a candidate, so distraction can occur. On the basis of this distraction, relevant information may not be obtained. It needs a lot of preparation in semi-structured interview. It is very difficult to defend legally. Unstructured interview, and third type is unstructured interview. This is also called discovery interview, guided conversation, informal interviews, casual interview, free flowing interviews. Because in interviews purpose, for interview purpose, the general experiences and quality we are looking to access is that the goal that we gather and record important information, and we make sure that we have to be vigilant, we have to be focused enough, we have to be flexible in order to understand the candidate responses, and scientific we explore scientific reasons or justification what a person is going to be exploring. Clear? So this is what we call unstructured interview, having no pre-planned question, having no pre-planned phenomena. Disadvantages, disadvantages are main disadvantages advantages are they seem much more casual and helpful and help candidates to relax and feel more comfortable during the interview. Observing direct behavior allow controls of extraneous variables, reliability of results, try to establish rapport and trust, gently guide discussion towards goal, explorative and qualitative studies. They have increased validity. Disadvantages are time consuming, control can affect behavior, not possible to know intentions behind the behavior, unable to produce data as whole, analysis would be difficult, information that we gathered in unstructured interview we cannot compare it with structured interview that is pre-planned, pre-structured, uh, having a um, organized form of interview. The last method is case study method. Study method, it is a systematic inquiry into an event or a set of related events which aims to describe and explain the phenomena of interest. It refers to the collection and presentation of detailed information about a particular participant or a small group, frequently including the accounts of subject themselves. It is an in-depth study of a particular situation rather than a sweeping statistical survey. Case study, the procedure we used, which we are labeling a case study, this procedure is basically used for a oral society, for a oral groups, not for a particular group. When is case study appropriate? According to Yin 2003, a case study can be considered when the focus of study is to answer how and why questions. You cannot manipulate the behavior of those involved in the study. You want to cover contextual conditions because you believe they are relevant to the phenomena under study. The boundaries are not clear between the phenomena and context. So the procedure used in case study means that the researcher provides a description of a behavior. This comes from interviews and other sources such as observation. The client also report detail of event from his or her point of view. The researcher then writes up the information for both sources above as a case study and the input interprets the information. The researcher may also continue for an extended period of time, so the process and development can be studied as they happen. And in case study, we simply observe what is happening to, and we can arrange or reconstruct the phenomena. The basic point of case study is how we uh, use and how we make the analysis of the case study. The data collected in case study for a purpose of case study can be analyzed using different theories, using different approaches and interpretation and information that the researcher decided what to include or leave. A good case study should always make clear information, having factual description, having day-to-day opinion, having real life opinion. Like in case study, for example, case study of Malala Yousafzai, or a case study of LBGT community members. So this is the condition we actually study in real life setting. For this, we are not bound to rearrange the oral phenomena. Let's suppose for LBGT communities, lesbian, gays, bisexual, and transgender, we cannot uh, test there, or we cannot conduct experiments on them in a laboratory setting. We have to be vigilant enough in order to observe them in naturalistic environment. Clear? So this was all about today's topic. Inshallah, you will find it very easy, very precise. If any questions, you can ask me in a group, or you can ask me, uh, or you can put your queries on LMS. So inshallah, will try my level best to provide authentic answers. This was all about today's topic. Take care. Allah Hafiz. Fi amanillah.